Welcome to Back to the Text Themselves, a series on phenomenology. Today's video examines Chapter 4, Section 27 of Heidegger's Being and Time. A set of psychological experiments conducted in the 1950s presented a demographically homogeneous group with the rather simple task of determining which line on the right matches the one on the left. However, unbeknownst to the second individual from the right wearing the white t-shirt, the remaining members of the group were all Confederates, meaning they are pretending to be participants when in fact they are secretly members of the research team. These Confederates have been instructed to give the wrong answer each time, much to the surprise of the actual participant whose responses initially disagree with the other members. You can see here the growing discomfort in his body language. The distance he experiences between himself and the other members eventually leads him to provide responses that match these others. Here we have another experiment in which an individual enters an elevator. Several others follow him into it. However, these individuals have been instructed to violate a social norm by facing toward the back of the elevator rather than the front. And well, you can see how the unwitting participant responds. What's going on here? Yes, we could interpret these observations on the level of social psychology and discuss causal factors that explain conformity behavior. However, these examples illustrate a more fundamental dimension of human existence concerning a mode of being in the world with others, in which our possibilities are restricted and determined, foregoing our responsibility, and instead allowing these others to determine our choices for us. This is, for Heidegger, an inauthentic mode of being with others, whereby, in our average everydayness, we become unreflectively absorbed into a group of anonymous Daseins who Heidegger calls das Man, the they. And so we'll address the following questions today. 1. What is distantiality? 2. What are the dimensions of the they that make up publicness? And 3, how are inauthenticity and authenticity distinguished? Dasein cares for others. Heidegger calls this concern, in contrast to the taking care of things ready to hand. We may be concerned in such a way that we assume responsibility for another's taking care of things, leaping in, or we may direct our concern toward others, helping them to take on their own possibilities more fully, leaping ahead. These modes demonstrate how there are differences among Daseins in how we care for others. And as Dasein, I care how my care differs from how others care. It matters to me whether I care as much as and in the same manner as others do. This difference I encounter between my care and another's, Heidegger calls distantiality. Perhaps you've had a conversation with someone who just told you about their volunteering for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and it elicits guilt in you for how little you volunteer. Or you find yourself surprised when, being very engaged in a particular topic for a class, you find your classmates utterly bored. And when this difference is conspicuous to me, I reflect upon it and care about whether this difference is to be equalized. The German word for distantiality contains the word which can be translated as constancy, and it's the quality of enduring or remaining unchanged. So distantiality, this lack of constancy, initially refers to Dasein's openness to assuming yet to be actualized possibilities. It's a kind of movement that reflects an authentic mode of existence. Now, one quick footnote here. This interpretation diverges from how distantiality is often portrayed. There is a form of self-constancy that refers to an authentic resoluteness in projecting oneself toward one's own most possibilities. And as we'll soon see, there is a mode of distantiality that in fact leads to a kind of constancy that is inauthentic. For example, Dreyfus defines distantiality as our essential tendency to minimize the distance between ourselves and others by subtle coercion or co-option, especially when we are not aware of doing so. Now, if we look closely at the text where distantiality is initially presented, there is a distinction between 1, having an awareness of our difference from others, and 2, having this awareness of difference move us to minimize this difference. I agree with David Egan in this article, in which he argues that distantiality is best understood as number 1, an awareness of the difference, while number 2 is a derivative or deficient form of distantiality, a notion that we'll turn to next. In pushing Dasein to reduce this difference, a certain form of distantiality aims at a constancy in care as to become equalized to others' care, just as the participants in the video that I showed feel the pressure to conform to others in the group. Here, distantiality may become hidden from me. This inconspicuous mode of distantiality allows it to take on a rather insistent quality as I unthinkingly seek to conform myself to others without realizing that's what I'm doing. And as such, though distantiality may initially reflect an openness to possibilities, its inconspicuous mode leads to a subservience to others. Here, Heidegger uses the term subservience in the sense of others taking away my being from me or depriving me of my possibilities by limiting those possibilities to the whims of others. Now, who are these others that I become subservient to, who distance us from our possibilities as we remove the distance between ourselves and them? These are not specific, identifiable others, but rather form an indistinct crowd of others. And it's the anonymity of these others that allows them to dominate me in an inconspicuous manner. They're the cool kids, or the everybody, as when a child protests, but everybody's doing it. Heidegger gives this group of anonymous others the name of das Man, the they. This crowd of indistinct others is always already part of my average everydayness, finding them in my absorption with the surrounding world, and utilizing public transportation, and gathering information from social media and the insulated bubbles that it gives rise to. Gradually, Dasein dissolves into being merely another one of these others. As Heidegger states in one of the more rhetorically powerful lines in Being and Time so far, in this inconspicuous and unascertainability, the they unfolds its true dictatorship. We enjoy ourselves and have fun the way they enjoy themselves. We read, see, and judge literature and art the way they see and judge. But we also withdraw from the great mass the way they withdraw. We find shocking what they find shocking. The they, which is nothing definite, and which all are, though not as a sum, prescribes the kind of being of everydayness. This everydayness of my inconspicuous distantiality reveals a tendency for Dasein to aim at the lowest common denominator, what Heidegger calls the leveling down of all possibilities of being. The everyday averageness of the they resists the exception. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Everyone wins a trophy. To quote another set of formidable lines by Heidegger, every priority is noiselessly squashed. Overnight, everything that is original is flattened down as something long since known. Everything won through struggle becomes something manageable. Every mystery loses its power. In this consideration of the they, 3 dimensions have been identified. 1, an inconspicuous distantiality. 2, my absorption in my average everydayness. And 3, leveling down. Together they form what Heidegger calls publicness. Publicness determines my interpretation of the world and Dasein. It's always correct because it avoids getting to the heart of the matter by reducing all genuine distinctions and obscuring all important differences. Just to take an example that's near to me, every time I make one of these videos, I have to decide whether to simplify the content or to maintain a high level of demanding rigor. The first option will likely appeal to greater numbers, whereas the second likely narrows who would be willing to watch these videos. And so which do I want? Which will be sustainable in the long run? These are not easy questions to answer, but it's also the kind of decisions being made by news media all the time. And well, if you watch how the news is presented on any of the cable news networks and compare it to what you might find from other news sources less reliant on ad revenue, you can see the difference in the degree of leveling down that occurs. Now, the problem shouldn't be framed as an either-or. Of course, there's going to be some accommodation in communicating information to another, especially, for example, when you're teaching it. Yet, there also is the temptation to want to appeal to the largest number of individuals, regardless of the quality of that presentation, or at least the quality of the information. Of course, the entertainment value can often go up a great deal in these situations. Consequently, the they disburdens Dasein by assuming my responsibility in making judgments and decisions for me. Yet the anonymity of the they means no one is responsible. Also, Dasein becomes not just being with one another, but being among one another, suggesting a dissolution of Dasein in one's absorption in our everydayness, leading Dasein to become a they-self. This establishes what Heidegger calls the constancy of Dasein. Constancy is a mode of Dasein's being with, one defined in terms of dependency and inauthenticity. Inauthentic Dasein becomes dispersed in the they. This is the starting point for Dasein. I'm initially given to myself in terms of the they, and for the most part, I remain in this way of being. Yet, the degree of dominance by the they over Dasein varies, and as Dasein increasingly assumes responsibility for its possibilities, one shifts from the inauthenticity of the they-self to an authentic self. Such a self is one who explicitly understands itself. It is arrived at by discovering the world and bringing it near through clearing away the coverings, obscurities, and disguises that distance Dasein from itself. Nonetheless, this authentic self, or being oneself, is not some exceptional state detached from the they. Heidegger is not promoting some form of individualism, nor is he making a moral claim either. And finally, he's not making the Nietzschean move of urging us to overcome ourselves as the beast of prey by becoming the Übermensch. Rather, Heidegger is claiming to remain at the level of ontology. In other words, the meaning of being is obtained through a consideration of the fundamental structures of existence. But we only arrive at those structures through this examination of our everyday dealings with things and others in the world. One of those dealings, and the one we find most frequently, is our inauthentic absorption with the they. And it's such an examination of existentials that will allow us in Chapter 5 to grasp the existential notion of what Heidegger calls being in as such. I would especially like to thank Clinton Vanderwalt for becoming a new supporter on this channel on Patreon, adding to the support provided by other Patreon members. You can also support this work on Patreon. The link is below in the description. You can also support this work by liking and sharing this video and subscribing to my channel. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, be well.